Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today is the waiver wire video. All names that can be found in this video are owned at a rate of 60% or less on ESPN Fantasy's website. We'll follow up on some injuries to start off the video. Just look ahead at, this week's buys and next week's buys, so maybe you can start to plan ahead a little bit. We'll look at this week's injuries, and, that was a fun week for fantasy football, I think. I think we're starting to zone in and figure some things out with what the NFL will look like this season and getting some assurances as to things that are different than what we came into the season thinking. Jets, Jets. Before we get into everything, we need to talk a little bit about the Jets. Sunday Night Football, they gave it to Kansas City. Depends on what you think of some of the rest calls and whatnot. I mean, they might have had a chance to win that game even. They gave it all, and I really like what they did with Zach Wilson, which was take the training wheels off, see what you have in the kid. If not now, then when are you going to find out what you truly have in him? So your offense becomes too predictable with the training wheels on him, and I like what they did. You got the 3 tight ends there. I mentioned this in the offseason, I believe, about this offense too. Like, they have a lot of weapons to be able to do things. The 3 tight ends can all block, which is something that offensive line needs some help with. So why not put some big packages in there, have 2, maybe even 3 of them every now and then in there, and they can block as well as receive. They're dual threat tight ends. They might not be the best receivers or the best blockers, but they can help out in both of those situations. And so I just really liked what we saw from the Jets this week, and I hope for them that it can continue, and they can get something out of Zach Wilson, at least make that team interesting and make them competitive. That would be fun. So that's it. It was a fun game to watch. Now on to just following up with some injuries here right at the top of the sheet. We've got Greg Dulcich looking like he's going to be eligible to return next week. Then Deontay Johnson, Jamal Williams are still 2 weeks away from being able to return in week 7. And Saquon Barkley, Monday night has not happened yet as of this recording. So with that ankle sprain, he's due to come back this week or next week, and he is doubtful to play tonight. So he should probably be good to return next week. Still not a guarantee based on the average timeline for injury, which is what all of these are. Just kind of Googled the average length of time it takes players in the NFL to return from these types of injuries. So looking at the week 4 injuries, we have Justin Herbert, who fractured a fingy and he broke a nail. And so that's literally what did happen, apparently. But not just a broken nail. Like, apparently it was pretty gruesome fracture and broken nail or nail injury. On top of that, they have a bye week next week. It's not in his throwing hand, so I think he would have played regardless if there was a bye week or not. Finished out the game, so I don't think there will be any. Not too concerned about Justin Herbert or his performance going forward from those injuries. Then Pat Freiermuth had a hamstring injury, and they pretty quickly ruled him out. This does not seem to be a simple tweak or anything like that. So the average time for a hamstring injury is like 13 days, but little tweaks can really reduce that average. So it sounds like it's going to be one of those more lengthier hamstring type of injuries, the ones that we're very familiar with. So not good for Pat Freiermuth or that offense when you consider they also lost their quarterback for quote-unquote some time with an undisclosed, as of this point in time, knee injury. T. Higgins also suffered a fairly significant injury with a rib fracture. 2 to 5 weeks is the average amount of time that it takes guys to return from that. And I do have a note on this one as far as T. Higgins goes. Week 7 bye, he is... In 2 weeks, they have a bye in week 7. Given the timeline there, the earliest that you should be expecting him back would be like week 8, maybe week 9. So it could be out for a little bit of time and be without T. Higgins for that time period. Then Javonte Williams, hip flexor. It sounds like he'll probably be back next week. Could be out for 1 week, but typically not too bad of an injury. So 70% chance that he misses 0 weeks. There's a 20% chance that he misses 1 to 2 weeks, and there's a 1 in 10 chance or a 10% chance that it would take more time than that to return. The team seems to be thinking that he'll probably be back next week, so that's where I came up with the 0 to 1 week time frame for the amount of time missed. Then Matt Stafford had a hip injury, on average 0 weeks missed for him is what we're expecting. And Rico Dowdle also had a hip injury. His was not significant, it was just a bruise, so he might miss a little bit of time, but not expected to be too severe at least. And Donald Parham had a wrist injury, have not seen any kind of update on that. Then Luke Musgrave played in the Thursday night game, if you recall, so that was a concussion. That's an average time of 9 days for recovery from concussions, so I think there's a pretty decent shot of him returning next week, but that is not any kind of guarantee. And Mike Williams had a hamstring injury. They ruled him out pretty quickly as well in that game, so on average it's 13 days. We'll see with him. I haven't really seen any other information. Doesn't seem like it's as bad as Pat Freiermuth's injury from what kind of has come out so far, but also could be just as bad as any hamstring, so we don't know yet. For Week 5, the Los Angeles Chargers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, and Cleveland Browns are all on bye, and looking 1 week ahead to Week 6, Green Bay Packers and Pittsburgh Steelers are also on bye. So let's get into the waiver wires. One note, actually, before that about some injuries. We also saw it was not a good week for injuries. Unfortunately, that has not turned into a good week for waivers necessarily, but there's still some gems out there to be had. Potential gems at least. But on the defensive side of the ball, there were some significant injuries as well. The Patriots defense, men just kept going down, but they did lose another defensive back in Christian Gonzalez. I don't know what the time frame is for them to get back some of their other D-backs, but they just got thinner at that position. And then they also lost their pass rusher, Matthew Judon. Not good vibes for that defense in the short term future, just something to keep in mind. And the Bills defense, Tre'Davious White, it sounds like he had a torn Achilles. I don't think that is official yet, and so that would put him out for the season, unfortunately. So that's definitely not good for their defense either. Starting off with the quarterbacks, a couple of guys that you should be on rosters in most leagues: Jared Goff, CJ Stroud. You look at the schedules here, nothing like too amazing for either of them in the short term, so just a heads up on that, but especially CJ Stroud with how he started the season, I think roster worthy. Matt Stafford's going to be getting Cooper Kupp back, so I think that he'll start to see more touchdowns, which is really all that's been missing from his profile, and I kind of like this 3-game stretch coming up for the Rams as well. And Sam Howell also like this 3-game stretch overall for him going forward, so it might be a sneaky guy if you need some upside at your quarterback spot over in the short term to pair him up with somebody else and stream those two and choose the best matchups between them, given in Week 6 going up against Atlanta I don't think is a high upside matchup. Then some streamers: Josh Dobbs, Zach Wilson. You can see who they're going up against and see why I might like them given their performances so far, and or a combination of a recent performance and the defense that he'll be facing. And then we go on to the running back position, and it's really not a good week for waiver wire guys. I wouldn't be attacking running backs for the waiver wire ultimately. Jaleel McLaughlin, maybe he's the starter this week, but it kind of doesn't look like he will be. There still might be some long-term upside for him, though, so not the worst-case scenario if you spend a little bit of fab on him, but I would not go crazy. Jaylen Warren, I do think, should be rostered, essentially. I don't know about going out and spending fab for that, but if you're desperate at your running back position, he has been outscoring Najee Harris so far this season, despite Najee looking pretty solid last week, finally. And Gus Edwards currently appears to be the starting running back for the Baltimore Ravens. However, I do have some concerns dually. First of all, just the game flow. They had the lead, playing from the lead, so it would be him over Justice Hill that's going to be getting the workload, so I don't know that it's to this kind of extreme that we could expect that every single week as far as the difference between their two's workload. And then we have Keaton Mitchell coming off of IR. He's eligible to return. He is like a Devon Achane-esque kind of running back skill set, so he might be able to bring some pop to this running back room that they might just want to try out. And so I don't think you need to spend any kind of waiver money on him unless you're in a really, really savvy league. But honestly, I think he has the most upside of any running backs. And then here's all my stashes, guys to pick up and put on your roster and not hope for. But if there's an injury ahead of them, they will probably bring you some value, and you won't have to spend any kind of waiver wire money against others, any fab money, next week, so they're just those kinds of players. And in the free agent room there, we got Chuba, Latavius Murray, Samaje Perine, Devin Singletary, just guys, if you need something this week, same with like Tyjae Spears, Tank Bigsby, Kenneth Gainwell, Roshan maybe, guys you can put out there and hope to get like 6-7 points for, unless they happen to get a touchdown on top of that. That's going to bring us to our wide receivers. Romeo Doubs, by far and away, I think, is the guy to have off of the waiver wire. Have been telling you to get him for weeks. He is probably the best option this week, going up against Las Vegas, then a bye, and then Denver after that. So you like the matchups too in the short term. Then Michael Wilson is a controversial pick, I guess, in some ways. Just like his draft profile, if you watch what he's done on the field, a lot of times it's quite impressive, but if you look at the underlying data, it's not always a recipe for success. So Michael Wilson's a bit of a controversial, but I do like the upside for Michael Wilson, a guy who I liked in the offseason until Josh Dobbs was the quarterback for them, but apparently that's not as bad as I thought it would be, and so each and every week he has been improving. So a high upside, riskier-esque kind of choice there for Michael Wilson. Might have just seen a flash in the pan that we don't see again until another 7 weeks has passed. Then Jameson Williams, also very, very high upside, but very risky. Not a whole lot of faith coming in his direction from a little clip that we got from Dan Campbell. Here's part of a quote. He said, "We'll see where it goes, and it's all about improvement." So not showing a whole lot of faith for Jameson Williams, but the talent coming out of college was certainly there, and he hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities in the NFL so far. And then Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, they both have bye weeks. You probably don't need to spend, if they're out there, too much at least fab on them. But still available, surprisingly, or not owned super highly after last week. Then here's a bunch of free agents, and did put them kind of in order as to where I think I'll probably end up having them ranked. These are not necessarily guys that you should or need to spend fab on unless you're in a really, really deep league, but they are usable. And Treylon Burks falls somewhere between usable and stash, as in I don't know that I would trust him if he is going this week, but it's also not a bad matchup. And as far as a stash, he's not at the top of my stash list either. It depends what happens tonight for Jalen Hyatt, Wandale. No, I would put him under Josh Downs as in terms of a stash, but I would also start him over some of these guys potentially as well if I had to. So Rashee Rice is my number one stash. Outside of Romeo Doubs, I'd much rather put Rashee Rice onto my roster and hope that works out in a couple weeks, but he's not a guy who you can use next week, but his breakout might come next week as soon as. So just waiting for that breakout from Rashee Rice, and then who knows, a lot of upside from there. And I will also mention here Darius Davis is a rookie, later round guy. Maybe he's a day 3 guy, and everybody's talking about Los Angeles Chargers needing speed from their wide receiver core. This was the guy that they drafted that could bring them that kind of speed, and we saw them utilize that, even game plan him into the game plan without Mike Williams there this last week. And so maybe that's something that grows and thrives. So I think you could do worse for a stash there. Quite a bit of upside with him. And then these 3 guys I really just have down here so I don't forget about them in the future as far as free agents. That just guys who I do like, regardless of matchup and whatnot. And that's going to bring us to our tight ends and our DST streamers. Jake Ferguson should not be on waiver wires any longer for the same reason that I liked him all offseason. You got a head coach, a system, and a quarterback who all have done well for their tight ends throughout the entirety of them existing and playing in the NFL. So I like Jake Ferguson quite a bit, and I think he needs to be rostered at this point in time. And then here's my streamers for this upcoming week that I really like, given the matchups and given how they've played all this season. And Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, both guys who do end up making this list as well. Dawson Knox just gives you a little bit less of a floor, but he has that touchdown potential more so than Dalton Kincaid so far this season. And then DST streamers, we're just probably going to take New England off of there, given the injuries and everything. They're going up against New Orleans, not New England, as it said, but Baltimore Ravens going up against Pittsburgh, New York Jets going up against Denver. That one, maybe I'm overrating how bad Denver's defense is, and for some reason putting that into this equation, but I do still kind of like the Jets against Russell Wilson and how he plays with the deep balls and whatnot, I think they could end up having a good day. Green Bay Packers going up against Las Vegas, a little bit safer of a choice there, I'm sure, defensively, but not as good of a defense. And the Commanders seen Chicago. Seems like a lot of people will probably be on top of that one. So there it is for my Week 4 waivers, your DST streamers, and injury updates. Thank you very much, and look for my rankings videos, as well as you can always see my rankings all week as they get updated on my website, www.theffforge.com. Thank you very much. Peace out.